Hey everyone! Today we're going to review how to measure angles. We've already worked on that angles are the point where two rays meet. If you have any questions about angles or the types of angles, go back to Math Activity 1 and rewatch that video. Today what we will need is a protractor, which is a tool that is used to measure angles. So you'll see up here that I've protractor bubbled because it is very important. This is what we need to use to measure how many degrees are in an angle. Alright, so a protractor is a tool used to measure and draw angles. What you'll notice about my protractor is if you're able, I just printed this out from online and I have a template linked into our Math Anchor charts and onto our choice board, and then I just cut it out. There's also a lot of online protractors that you can use, or you might have your protractor from school in your backpack. What you'll notice about this is that down at the bottom there's a line right in the middle of the protractor, and on that line, or maybe yours has a dot, I want you to highlight that or color that because that's the most important part. This line is what we're going to use to line up our protractor with our angles and with our rays of our angles to measure how many degrees are in the angle. You'll also notice that on a protractor there are two different lines with numbers. Alright, and they're kind of opposite. So maybe on one side we have 0, which is an itty bitty number, and on the other line we have 190 degrees, which is a huge number. Later in our video I'll go over why we have those two numbers and why they're important. The first step in using a protractor to measure an angle is to place that center of a protractor onto the vertex of the angle, which we talked about is where those two rays meet, also that end point, but that vertex is our academic vocabulary. Alright, so I have my angle, I have my two rays that meet at the same end point or vertex. I'm going to take my protractor and I'm going to find that center point or that center hole on the protractor that we labeled. And I'm going to line that up with the end point or vertex of my angle. Step number 2. After we've placed the hole or the center hole, or where we color-coded our line of our protractor over the vertex of an angle, we need to line up the straight edge of the protractor, so the bottom edge of the protractor, with one side of the angle. Next, I'm going to go ahead and line up the straight edge of my protractor with the straight edge of my angle right here. While you're lining the center hole or center line and bottom of the protractor with one side of the angle, I want you to think in your head, what type of angle is this? Is it an obtuse, acute, or right angle? Because that is going to help you later when we go ahead and look at the numbers on our protractor. After we line up the straight edge of our protractor with one side of the angle, we have to find the point where the protractor, the curved edge of the protractor, and the other side of the angle intersect or overlap. That's going to tell us the number and which number we need to look at. Then I'm going to go ahead and look and see where my second ray of my angle, this one right here, overlaps or intersects with the curved edge of my protractor. So you'll see that if I just keep drawing this line, this ray, it goes right over the numbers 60 and 120. Alright, so we've lined up the center line or center hole on the protractor with one side of the angle. We have taken a look at where the second side of the angle overlaps with the numbers on our protractor. And our last step is to read the number on the protractor. And then we're going to think again to ourselves, Is it an obtuse angle, an acute angle, or a right angle? So which number makes the most sense? If this is where my ray of my angle intersects at either 60 degrees or 20 degrees, I have to ask myself, which one makes sense? If I go ahead and take a look at my angle, and I think about the types of angles that we've already learned, I know that this is not a right angle because a right angle is exactly 90 degrees and it would have that little box in the corner. And I also know that because this is 90 degrees and my angle is less than that this is an acute angle because this angle is less than 90 degrees. So if I go back and look at my protractor and I line up my center hole and I line up this straight edge with my one side of my angle and I see where they intersect, and I have the numbers 60 and 120. 120 doesn't make sense because that's greater than 90 degrees. And we already just said that this angle is an acute angle, so it has to be smaller than 90 degrees. So 60 degrees makes sense. So this angle is 60 degrees. Let's take a look at another one. Now, I have an angle that looks like this. Go ahead and take a second and think about what type of angle this is. Is this an acute, right, or obtuse angle? Right, if we want to go ahead and draw our 90 degrees again, roughly, it's going to be right there. And one of the rays of our angle is way past that. It's way greater than 90 degrees. So because we know that this angle, the degree, we don't know how much exactly, but we know that it's greater than 90, we know that this is an obtuse angle. And then we can repeat the process the same way. We can go ahead and take our protractor, line up the center dot with our end point, but take a second and think, am I good to go? Can I measure? Right, I can't. My next step after I've lined up my centers, I have to make sure that the one side of my angle is lined up with my protractor. So now I'm good to go to take a look and see where my other side of my angle intersects or overlaps with the curved side of my protractor. So again, I would recommend that you start at your end point, you draw a line, and you just keep tracing that ray or that part of your angle until it overlaps. Very ironically, I have the numbers 120 and 60 again. But this time, knowing that my angle is obtuse, think to yourself, which number, 60 or 120, doesn't make sense? Right, 60 doesn't make sense because we know that an obtuse angle has to be greater than 90 degrees and 60 degrees is way less than that. So we know that the correct answer has to be 120 because it's greater than 90 degrees. So this angle has a measure of 120 degrees. That is it for measuring angles. If you have any questions, please ask me or another one of your 5th grade teachers, and we would be happy to help you. Again, if you need to review angles and types of angles, go back to Math Activity 1 on the choice board and rewatch that video.